I'm an illustrator. I tell stories through the drawings that I make, through the paintings that I make, through the watercolors. I'm going to do you all a favor and let the drawings and the paintings do a lot of this speaking here tonight or today. I've been an illustrator for 38 years, but it wasn't until last year that I became a member of a very small group of individuals who do combat art, who do what we call witness art, putting themselves in harm's way, drawing in a combat zone and under sometimes very frightening situations. I did it by embedding with an Army MEDEVAC unit and helicopter MEDEVAC unit in Kandahar, Afghanistan. I spent a few weeks with them last summer. And it was exactly what the cliche says. Long stretches of boredom interrupted by bursts of chaos. The boredom was palpable. 130-degree heat, doing everything possible to stay out of it. Lots of cigarettes, lots of conversation, more cigarettes, watching lots of movies, trying to catch as much sleep as possible. I drew all that kind of boredom. Then there was the chaos. The Army soldier who was brought on board the Black Hawk was looking pretty lifeless. He had absorbed an enormous shock of an IED. He had lost no limbs, and he wasn't even bleeding, but his body had been broken, it seemed, like in 1,000 pieces. The MEDEVAC team went to work immediately, doing everything possible to save his life. I was trying to keep up with this tornado of activity happening in front of me and trying to record the event on paper. And by the end of that 15 minutes, by the time we brought him to the hospital, it was all over. And all I had was a jumble of lines that was telling a story. Now, I'm also a member of the Society of Illustrators, and I'm on the board of directors. And we have a very long, an over 60-year association with the United States Air Force Art Program. And the art program sends our illustrators out around the world to document the activities of what the Air Force is doing. This image was done by myself here. I was like out with the pararescue teams, the PJs, documenting their training out there in New Mexico. This goes back to one of my first assignments for the Air Force. Out in Texas, it was a joint Army-Air Force training operation, urban ops. I knew right from the start that I did not want to render planes or C-17s. As much as I loved looking at them, I knew that what I wanted to do was tell the human story. Another PJ picture. The story of cooperation, the story of teamwork, the story of sacrifice and concentration and duty. I love this picture of the combat control unit that's in training out in North Carolina. Real, hardcore individuals in a totally poetic warming up exercise. I thought there was something very balletic about that scene I caught. Something that contrasted with that very tough exterior, that very strong exterior. With the PJs, the exercises covered all aspects of their training. Here I was documenting the mountain rescue training. That instructor over here, as a matter of fact, who's holding on, was treated almost as a god over there by not only the trainees, but the other instructors. And the way they hung off that wall, the way the instructors I'm talking about, just while their trainees are just like tangled up in the ropes and the gear, and they were just floating around. And I said to him after, at the end of the day, I said, I bet you when you were a kid, you had to climb every freaking high tree. And he said, you're right. This was also from one of my first missions for the Air Force. And I put this in because this went back to my what I was talking about before about cooperation. The trainer, the Army trainer up here, the instructor, was giving a little lesson in improvisation. There was a wounded soldier in this urban op exercise, and they didn't have a litter. And so he was like, so what are you guys going to do? And they were like, he goes, tear a door off one of the buildings. And they did that. And they put him on the door, and they started carrying him away. And as they were carrying him away, the trainer was saying, this is not like Rambo. This is the real kind of rescue. This is how we actually do it. This isn't movie nonsense. It didn't always have to be action shots. It didn't always have to be something dramatic. I found that many of my most revealing moments came just observing the soldiers in repose right before going out on another exercise. The master sergeant here, one of the instructors, just going over last-minute details, those moments where you just observe that dedication, that sincere effort to impart every last bit of knowledge onto the trainees, so that somewhere down the line, somewhere in their lives, all that training can very likely save it. I even love this because this is after the third or fourth repetition of a big training exercise. It's 1:30 in the morning, and they're going over another debriefing. They're kind of getting their asses chewed over the things they did wrong, but also about the things they did right. And for me, the most fun was just catching those expressions. They were tired, but they were definitely listening. One of the trainees was even taking notes. Now, here's the thing about drawing, and this is what I like about drawing. I think that drawing can reach an audience beyond you folks in the military, a general audience, the civilian population, in a way that photographs can't. I'm not putting down photography. Cameras can take beautiful pictures, powerful pictures, but they're instantaneous shots. They grab everything, but they don't have a vision. They don't tell a story through the eyes of through the act of drawing. Drawing takes time, and anybody who's looking at a drawing is being drawn into the, no pun intended, being drawn into the procedure. So it can be a rough scene. It can be a brutal scene, but the fact that it's done by human hands, it's not this mechanical object, creates this buffer in a sense, and the viewer can go into it, can take that in, can be impacted by that. Now, witness art, I refer to as combat art, but witness art can also take another interpretation. And I think witness art will broaden to include wars not only that are actually happening on the battlefield. We've got other wars going on. We've got an unprecedented number of soldiers and Marines that are returning back with catastrophic injuries. And their stories, they are now in their own wars. They are in a war of rehabilitation and reintegration into society. This is Sergeant Jason Ross of the United States Marine Corps, EOD. He still wants to be a trainer. He's back out in California. This was done last year when I visited him at Bethesda. He's doing very well, and his father's been keeping a daily blog of his recuperation. Just a quick word about Jason. He was one of those miracle recoveries. The extent of his injuries was so huge that it literally was the sheer strength of his character that saved him. According to Lieutenant Colonel Deborah Malone, who was his chief surgeon, who is absolutely in love with him, by the way, because of that strength of character. I couldn't help but watch that struggle that first time I visited him. They were just taking off the casts on his arms, and he was just getting that exercise in reflexing those arms, his wrists, as a matter of fact, when I came in that day. He was tough. He was he was so cool. And that's the other thing, too. You walk into the room. I was kind of concerned. I'm doing this, by the way, through something called the Joe Bonham Project. This was started by a former Marine, a combat artist, Michael Fay. We've been doing this now for over a year. We originally were visiting Bethesda, and now it's Walter Reed. So we've been going there like once a month, documenting these stories for the public record, for not just military consumption, but this is a story that has to go out to the general population. So, let's go next one. This was just recent. Another Marine. This particular week we were there, it seemed like there were a lot of Marines who got caught in IED situations. Tim Donnelly had just been there for a few weeks. When we visited him, he was there kind of all braced up. They had performed a 17-hour surgery the night before, grafting, taking bone out of his shoulder, and reconstructing his forearm. He was quiet. He was very calm. And that's what I wanted to get to about before. My first time when I went to on one of these visits, and I was saying to Michael, I said, how am I going to, I'm kind of concerned how I'm going to feel seeing these. I mean, it's one thing to see somebody who's injured. It's another thing to see somebody who's really in bad shape. You walk into these rooms, and you're immediately put at ease because they are such resolute characters, such strength of character, such almost like a stoicism that's indescribable. You're calmed down. You're calm. I'm calmed down. And you're talking. And before you know it, they're telling you stories. They're telling you stuff that their family that's been with them sometimes up to over a year, they're sitting in the room with them as we're drawing them, and they're opening up. They just love this whole process of somebody spending time drawing them. And they're telling you stories that the wives or the fathers or the mothers are looking over to them, and they'll say, you never told us that, and we've been here for all this time. All this opening up, all this a relaxation coming back from them. Why? Because we're drawing a picture? No, because we're paying attention. We're giving some respect. We're giving something back. This was an Army Ranger in training who had basically been Swiss cheesed from an IED. And they were just, that day we were visiting, they were taking off all these various bandages around him and checking out all the puncture holes. He was very quiet. He was just like this tough Mickey. He reminded me so much of a young Mickey Mantle. And he was so, and he had a great sense of humor. That's the other thing. Most of these wounded have incredible senses of humor, almost macabre sense of humor. And then there was Sergeant Yaregi, Staff Sergeant Yaregi from the Army. We visited him not that long ago. He became part of an article in the New York Times that just came out just this past Sunday, featured about the work we're doing with the wounded warriors, documenting their stories. He was terrific. He couldn't stop talking. His kids were there in the room with him. His wife was there. And at one point, his son just got into bed with him and cuddled up, and it was the most fantastic thing to witness. And he would just continue talking. They were watching TV. My last picture here, Specialist Derek Mcconnell, a tough North Jersey Irish kid. The room was in chaos the day we visited him. I almost said his mother was in the room. She was terribly upset. His brother was being rushed to the hospital for an emergency. She was down there in Walter Reed. She was crying. And he's like, relax, Mom. He's in an emergency. They're going to take care of it. He's all right. Everything is fine. I said, should we get out of the room? Should we leave you? He goes, no, just keep drawing. What's going to happen is going to happen, all right? Just keep drawing. Derek I saw him just a couple weeks ago at Walter Reed again. He just popped out. I was drawing somebody else, and there he was next to me in his wheelchair. We had a great conversation. Just a terrific person. My bottom line is this. This would be a tragedy just to keep these pieces of artwork within the military. The real impact of these drawings is if they get out to the general public, is if the general public gets to know. Because frankly, as self-centered as they seem to be, the American public just needs to be made aware of something. They will come in, and they will come in through drawings in a way because everybody just loves to see a drawing. And once they see a drawing, they'll want to know more about the story. You can get more people involved. Thank you.